I'm Robert Mays. Joining me today, my good friend Nate Tice. Nate, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing very well. It's very fitting that you look like you are sending in an audition tape to, to somebody, to a casting director of some sort. But because I've been kind of on a movie binge in October so far, knocked out a couple horror movies already, knocked out Scream 3. Haven't seen that in a while.
I watched all of them in preparation for
Really
Scream
tell me
6 because we did a Scream rewatch for our little movie club that I do with two of my friends. I call it a movie club. Me and two buddies watch a movie and then watch a movie that's tangentially related to it. And then
so
talk
guys
about
hanging
them.
out as a movie club now.
That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. It's everyone's a dad now and has no time, so we have to structure it. That's what it really is, and it's not a movie club.
What'd you think of Scream 3? What were your thoughts on it? I liked it. I remember liking it. Not remember, it was last week. I liked it way more than I thought I would.
Yeah,
it wasn't like great.
I remember I liked Scream 2 more than I thought I was going to on the rewatch. I just because that has like a meta element to it that I really appreciated in the moment, which that was very fun. But Scream 6 was great. For those of you who have not seen Scream 6, I highly encourage you to flip it on VOD. It is a really good just Friday night sink into the couch movie in October.
Yeah, thrill a minute type of movie. Yeah, Scream 5 really liked. Scream 6 liked even more. I really did.
In my opinion, 3 of the best set pieces in the entire series in Scream 6. And I don't want to give them away. Well, let's call it the subway.
Subway was awesome.
The window.
The ladder. Oh,
the subway. The ladder. The subway, the window, ladder, and then even the first one. Like the first scene, the opening scene was absolutely incredible. So this is your horror movie check-in as we start October.
We're watching Hollywood H2O next week.
Your poor wife. Your poor wife.
No, that was her suggestion. That was her suggestion. I swear.
Right.
She's in the muck with me. She is not an innocent party in this. This is her idea.
Speaking of the muck, as we get into October, not the best week of games. We're going to be approaching our week 6 preview, which this technically is, a little bit differently. We're going to talk about a handful of matchups at the end of this show, but I wanted to use today to do what we're going to call sort of a hierarchy reset. Okay. So on Monday, you tweeted out your revised post week 5 power rankings because we talked on the Sunday night show about whether the Niners were the best team in the league and what that may mean about, let's say, the rest of the top 10. And your list that you tweeted out, one, I thought the order of them and the teams were interesting, but the unspoken context between each team and the gaps between some of the teams and how you would tier them, in my opinion, it's one of the biggest stories of the first 5 weeks of the year is just how muddy some of these tiers are among, let's say, the top 10 to 12 teams in the NFL. So that's how we're going to start today's show. We're going to just do a hierarchy reset, a hierarchy check-in to kind of figure out where these tier breaks are. So for people who did not see your rankings, I'm just going to list the teams off very quickly, and then we're going to talk about them. Niners, Chiefs, Eagles, Lions, Bills, Dolphins, Ravens, Jags, Seahawks, Cowboys. Yes. Those were your top 10, and those were the order. So now let's do some forensic analysis here. The Niners and the Chiefs at the top. In your opinion, is that a tier, or are the Niners in their own tier followed by a break and then the Chiefs?
This whole thing started by me in the shower going, oh, last night's show was pretty fun. Yeah, okay, I feel pretty good about the 49ers. I hadn't looked at Twitter, and then going, I didn't say the Chiefs. And I do think the Chiefs and 49ers are in their own tier. And that's how this whole thing started. But I think that they're the top teams in their respective conferences. I think how both of these teams are playing. 49ers, of course, have had some more definitive moments, especially on Sunday night. But I think the Chiefs are right there with them. But I do think that is I would say the elite tier at this point in time, 5 weeks into the season, going into week 6.
Okay, well, why do you say that? Because if you ask a casual fan, if you ask the average NFL fan how the Chiefs have looked this year, I think they would be a little bit disappointed about what their offensive output has looked like and how close they've kept it in some of these games outside of destroying a Chicago Bears team that barely belonged on the field with them. So why, in your opinion, are the Chiefs, whose success has been a little bit subtler, let's call it, so far this year, right there with the Niners, who have absolutely blown people up in real time and in prime time?
The Niners have the style points. They definitely do.
They certainly do.
Which is funny saying that. And it's like the Chiefs are the gritty team, like kind of feels weird to be saying that. But first and foremost, this is why I was all in on the Chiefs last year, is you always bet on Patrick Mahomes as long as he is healthy, and you bet on that offensive line and they are healthy. And I think that is a formula for success. Travis Kelce has kind of had a wonky start to the year, missing week 1, which, he's barely missed any time throughout his career. And then, kind of just, he had the ankle last on Sunday. He's going to have that tonight. He is playing tonight in Thursday night game. But on top of that, they have a defense that is playing, I think, very good football right now. So that has helped them as this offense is finding their kind of reconfigured identity, their 2023 identity. That's what this Chiefs team does every single year. And I think the defense is not only keeping them afloat, but impacting games. And so I think once this Chiefs team that I do think is getting better every single week on offense with Patrick Mahomes, remember, yeah, that's a formula for success. So I think that's why they're right up there with the 49ers, who I think everyone can see has a formula for success with that offense and that defense.
The underwhelming Chiefs offense thus far this year ranks 6th in offensive
Quote,
DVOA.
quote unquote.
Yeah. 6th. And I'm with you on the defense. And just such great returns from the young guys so far.
That's it.
Trent McDuffie looks excellent. L'Jarius Sneed is probably having the best season of his career so far. Good timing for him. I believe he's a free agent after the year.
Contract year is undefeated.
George Karlaftis has looked really good in year 2. So this bet they made where we're going to get a little bit younger on defense, that's going to be the formula. We'll allow number 15 and number 87 to carry us on offense. It's a good formula. It's worked for them in the past, and it is working right now. So I personally have no issues with those two teams as the top 2 teams and those teams belonging in their own tier.
Yeah.
After that.
Oh, I was going to say, though, with the Chiefs, too, is the Karlaftis, good shout out, too, because the coolest thing they're doing right now is Karlaftis and Chris Jones on the same side.
Yes.
But Karlaftis is at D tackle and Chris Jones is at D ed.
Chris Jones has honestly been more impactful as an edge rusher this year than he has been on the interior, which is kind of wild and speaks to his skill set.
And how explosive he is. But the offense too is like, you got to remember their top 3 pass catchers last year in terms of targets outside of Travis Kelce, their ages were 26, 28, and 30. And that 26 is an old 26 in Juju. But this year it's 23, 24, 23. So they're going to take time.
And I honestly think their ceiling is higher because I think Rashee Rice has a higher ceiling than Juju does. You still have MVS. I think that there's a further place for them to go even than they did last year when they were the best offense in the league.
Rashee Rice, they're asking to do some real stuff earlier than I anticipated, like running real routes over the middle of the field as opposed to just go balls, just down the field.
He was a ball winner. That was the skill set that he was theoretically supposed to bring to the offense.
I compared him to a literal Mustang, like a wild horse, because even though he went to SMU, that wasn't why I called him that, because that's what you just had to rein in. But they're asking him to do real stuff, which is going to pay dividends down the road, even if it's uneven right now. But I think that's going to be really good in a few weeks, I think.
All right, so let's talk about the tier below that. Yes. You have the Eagles and then the Lions. Here's why I think this order and, again, maybe the non-tier break between them is interesting. When I wanted to do this exercise, one of the biggest things that I want us to talk about is that the Lions, I think, belong in whatever this second tier and this muddy second tier looks like. Coming into the season, I had real concerns about what moves they had made in the offseason and how those moves might translate to them cracking into the top tier of teams in the NFC. They drafted a tight end in the second round. They drafted Jahmyr Gibbs in the top 12. It's like, man, do they add enough firepower to close the gap between them and Philly and San Francisco? Or is this just going to be they're a decent story, but they don't really belong in the conversation with these guys. They're a 10, 11 win team where they're probably going to just top out in the divisional round at best. And it's going to take still one more step for them to actually join these championship caliber teams in the NFC and at large. And right now, I don't think that's the case. And I'm happy to take the L on that. I also couched the Lions conversation in Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell right now deserve the benefit of the doubt based on how last year has went. And the development we've seen from their defense and how explosive and dangerous they are on offense, even without adding any big name, kind of known quantity weapons, I think they're right there with Philly and with everybody else based on how they've played on both sides of the ball. And I just did not anticipate feeling that way 5 weeks in.
It's when the season goes along and why I see teams ebb and flow, because of injuries and teams get caught up with what they're doing on offense or defense. The Lions, what they're kind of proving right now, our top pass catcher, Amon-Ra St. Brown is out, and you wouldn't even notice because of how this offense operated. That's a sign of a very good team. That is a
and defense is the same way.
Exactly.
CJ Gardner-Johnson gets hurt, and I mean Emmanuel Mosley is now out for the season, which is a really tough blow and sucks for him. But they've really endured injuries, especially in the defensive backfield, and then to the pass catchers. Jahmyr Gibbs didn't play last week either, and Josh Reynolds made like 6 ridiculous plays. So their ability to consistently find production from those guys, even when injuries have kind of diminished a couple position groups specifically, I think has been really impressive. And the defensive performance and development in general has been impressive. That's what you need. You know, when you're not going to make any splashy additions, and the front seven was another one of those position groups where I thought, oh man, like you're going to trade down and draft a running back with the 12th overall pick when there were front 7 players available that could really give you a little bit more juice up there. But then you see the development from Aleem McNeil, Aiden Hutchinson becoming full stop one of the most impactful edge rushers in the NFL so far this year. So you're going to get that. You're going to get them playing more cohesively. They're playing with a certain physicality on that side of the ball. You look at any sort of advanced metric that you want to, the Lions are top 5 on offense and defense right now. And if it continues on this trajectory, there are no caveats. There are no qualifiers necessary when you talk about their place among the elite teams in the league.
It's really cool too, because the offense does get a lot of hype, and because they deserve it. I think the shot plays that they use and these knockout blows that Ben Johnson and that staff get to. And it's cool when now with this defense making so many impact plays, getting the ball back, creating turnovers, then it goes touchdown, turnover, touchdown. And all of a sudden they jump on teams. They're playing, we usually say bully ball, just running the ball, pounding down your throat, but they're playing like bullies. We're like on offense and defense. The defense is teeing off on offenses right now. They're playing, I think too, is they're playing a lot more quarters. So it's kind of a schematic change that's helped kind of maybe their philosophy as a whole is they're playing more quarters, which is allowing their top end, their safeties to play more downhill. And I think that's impacting everybody. Everybody's
so interesting that going away from playing man actually makes them more aggressive.
Right.
Because I totally get what you're saying, and that does manifest when you watch them play, but it seems a little bit counterintuitive when you think about what that shift might look like.
Cover 4. Oh, isn't that prevent? Like, you know, that's what
it seems passive, but you don't have to play it passive that way. The Jets and the Niners are proof of that over the last couple of years. Just because you're a quarters-based defense doesn't mean you have to play with the level of passivity that some of those too high looks tend to suggest, I guess is what I would say.
And every quarters-based defense, and just the ebbs and flows that go throughout the game, like the Texans-Falcons game is a great example of this. It's a lot of, staring contests. Okay, we're going to make you dare to go underneath. Okay, you're going to have to throw that high low, and then the safety's going to drive it. Are you going to let your receiver take a shot, get hit, or are you going to throw it over the top and do a double move? Like that's kind of the ebbs and flows of these games, but they're doing it so well. I mean, look what they did to, yes, the Chiefs didn't have Kelsey, but they were playing so aggressive against them. What they did against the Falcons, they're playing top down. The Seahawks game was kind of back and forth, but what they're doing this past week against the Panthers, they were suffocating the Panthers for almost all the game. Like just how their DBs are playing, they're playing their linebackers and kind of like rotating them. But the pass rush too just stepped up, and they're only rushing 4. Like they're blitzing a lot less. It's not just eye tests, like you said, the metrics. They're just playing good, sound football, but they're playing it in a super aggressive manner that we see from these very good defenses right now.
So that 3-4 of Eagles Lions makes sense to me. I think it's totally justified. And I think the gap between them is much closer than we might have anticipated.
Yeah.
But you putting the Bills at 5.
Okay.
Feels reactionary. And some people responded to you putting the Bills there and said, one loss to the Jags in London is going to make you do this. It wasn't the result.
No.
It's the people they lost over the course of that game and the people that they've lost over the last 2 weeks.
Yep.
You're looking at a Bills defense now that no longer has Trey White, that no longer has Matt Milano, that no longer has Daquan Jones, which may not seem like that big of a loss until you realize how well Daquan Jones was playing.
Right.
He was fantastic as a pass rusher. He was an impactful player for them. So now you're digging deeper and deeper into the depth on defense. So I think that influenced you putting them as low as you did, but I'm still surprised you did this. Don't you realize that Josh Allen still plays quarterback for the Bills and that the offense is still very healthy?
That's why you watch the tape. This is why you watch the film. And when you watch these games back and you go, oh yeah, the offense just keeps succeeding in different ways. Just exactly what we wanted to see out of this offense. And Josh Allen is playing the best football of his career right now. He is so good. It's so much. Trevor Lawrence versus
So,
Josh
do you
Allen.
regret this? Are
A
you
little bit.
rethinking putting
I
them? They
a little bit.
clearly, let's say this, they clearly belong in this tier, in your
Yes.
opinion. Okay.
Yes.
Still,
I think they do. And then it's that they could get into the group of the Chiefs and the 49ers, or they can hang here depending on how this defense of depth kind of breaks down. Depth is great until you have to use it. And that's what always just scares me. So that's why I also just wanted to watch them a little bit. And I watched their backups play a little bit. I was like, okay, Ed Oliver's playing really, really well. Kyrie Elam's not going to play Calvin Ridley every single week. And he actually had some decent moments. And so, okay, that's what made me feel a little better reviewing the film. So I do think they're going to swing 2 or 3 spots, but they still have freaking Josh Allen. They still have an offense that I think is playing very, very well.
even in a game where we celebrated the Jags defense because of how well the Jags defense played, if you look at the underlying metrics for the Bills in that game, yards per play, success rate, anything, it was still very good.
Yeah.
Buoyed in part by some big plays late in the game when they were trying to get back into it. But this is still a very dangerous, healthy offense. And it's surprising that you needed to be reminded of that, considering all the Josh Allen stock you had coming into this year.
That was Monday a.m., 7 a.m. West Coast time. I watched that film, I think, like that afternoon after I filmed Wind the Clock. And I remember watching it. I'm just like, oh my God, look at these guys go. Yeah, this offense is exactly what I want to see this year. Like, that's real quick is they've won and lost now, but this offense after week 1 has now been succeeding in different ways. And that's why I wanted to say again, why I want to bring it up again is because now we're seeing the run game. We're seeing Josh Allen take over. We're seeing a calmer Josh Allen. We're seeing play action. We're seeing different personnels. So it's encouraging. It's a long season. The AFC is a fist fight every single week. So still got to feel really good if you're a Bills fan.
Bills at 5. They belong in the tier with the Eagles and the Lions. I think we both agree on that. Is there a line for you then before we get to the Dolphins at 6?
There is, just because I think that Dolphins defense has me a little bit worried, even as cool as their offense is. So that's what all these other teams we talked about, like they are having their units are both what? Top 10, top 12
or borderline.
Borderline, right?
Teams we're going to talk about here that are just below the Dolphins. The Dolphins offense is so good that they deserve mention with some of these other teams in this group who are right there in the top 12 on both sides of the ball.
And we want to talk about injuries too. The Dolphins now are kind of getting a couple. A-Chan's missing this week. I think Armstead's battling an injury as well. So
he's out he's on IR. I mean, he's on
IR, right?
Time. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's again why you kind of just hesitate a little bit. It's like, it's a long season. So we got to see too. But I think too is that the teams after who I say, so we got Ravens, Jags, Seahawks, Cowboys.
Yes.
Okay. I think they're closer to that than the group above. That's kind of how I feel about this next group. Like this is its own tier.
This is my next observation with this list here. This is fun that I get to just
I know.
I'm pain and proud of the list that you came up with. You have the Dolphins and then the Ravens.
Blood type. No, okay.
You have the Dolphins and then the Ravens. And if those are in the same tier, I think people would be surprised by you grouping them that way based on how the season has gone thus far. The Dolphins' success, they scored 70 fucking points in a game.
Right.
Like, the Dolphins' success has been very apparent. It's very easy to understand why the Dolphins are ranked here. Why, in your mind, do the Ravens, who have not had nearly the level of obvious success the Dolphins have had this year, belong in the conversation with that Miami team?
I think their defense, even if they haven't played a tough schedule so far, is very, very, very good. I would even say elite so far. And I want to see they're getting healthier on both sides of the ball. I think the offense they're moving the ball. Lamar is playing very good football right now. He is throwing the ball like it's fantastic watching him operate from the pocket and even on extended plays as a thrower.
Some of the best stuff we've ever seen from him. That is not an exaggeration. And obviously the counting stats don't line up with that, but we had a very long conversation about this on Sunday. He's been let down with injuries and with just unlucky bounces on turnovers. This offense, I think, is primed to have an explosion here over the next month or so against the right matchups.
Exactly. I think they are going to start putting it together on offense. Again, they're also going to get healthier there. They're not going to have receivers out every single week. They're going to just continuity. And that's what's going to help out the whole team, especially. And that's going to help Lamar even more, which I think is pretty scary. Like that, I think scary for other teams. I think it's gonna be very fun as a fan. So I think, but also how this defense is playing, they're doing awesome stuff. And I've been told, got hit up about it. They said, "Oh yeah, you really have the Ravens that high? Look who their defense is playing." And he was off the quarterbacks. And I said, yeah, they made them feel that way. They made them look like bad quarterbacks. That is what good defenses are supposed to do. So that I think that as a good thing, they didn't play anybody, Paul. Like that's kind of what it felt like, but it's like, just wait. This is a very, very, very,
And they've also
very
been
good unit.
hurt. They're healthier
Yes.
now. And
Yes.
Humphrey, his first game back had some tough moments against George Pickens. I feel pretty good about what that secondary is going to look like over the course of the year and what the defense is going to look like.
Yeah.
This is also speculation based on absolutely nothing. Haven't talked to anyone about this. They feel like a team that's like a move away. Like
Right.
I would not be surprised if they were a little bit aggressive when we get to trade deadline time, because it's now or never, man. You paid Lamar.
Yeah.
And this is a window. You look at the other teams around the AFC and around the league. I don't think there's anyone, if you're Baltimore, that should preclude you from trying to make a couple, we should go for it type moves here at the deadline. Can you go find another pass rusher potentially with Ajabo on IR and with Odafe banged up? Do you want to add a little bit more in the secondary? Secondary, maybe not, because I think that their continuity and the way that they can communicate and kind of hive-minded back there is a strength of theirs. But one more piece up front, that would not shock me based on what we've seen from this team in the past and the level of urgency I think they deservedly should have based on how they look so far.
Yeah. And so and also I just want to say about the Dolphins too, just tying this back together, is that like the Dolphins have shown they are elite on offense and have this fantastic, awesome unit that is getting banged up a little bit, but Mike McDaniel finds answers. That is what he's shown. He gets the benefit of the doubt from me. Can they shore up the defense? I'm not sure. Hopefully we see a little bit more of that. But I think at least both of us, or at least me, but I'm assuming you as well, Robert, is both sides of the ball of the Ravens both just feel like they're primed to be ascending, as opposed to this Dolphins team just trying maybe answering questions. This Ravens team just needs the ball to bounce their way a couple times. And I think, like you said, like maybe a 30 or 40 kind of point explosion kind of comes out of it.
Okay. Do you think that Dolphins Ravens group is in its own sort of mini tier? And do you think there's a drop before we get to the Jags, Seahawks, and Cowboys, or is that not how you see it?
I see all these five together as like their own little tier.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So why? I think the Jags conversation probably a little bit similar to the Ravens framing them. Correct. If you think they belong in this group.
Yes. And watch how they played against the Bills. It's like, okay, that's what you want to see. They're hanging with the big boys and they're playing well. And how that offense played, it felt like almost like a sigh of relief for that offense. And I think this defense is what they're doing is at least mostly, I think, sustainable, and hopefully they can find a little bit more juice as a pass rushing unit.
Yeah, I was going to say it's not like they've been creating a ton of turnovers and like wrecking games, rushing the passer. So I absolutely think it's sustainable based on the way
make it a
played.
slog. Yeah, and their safeties are playing out of their minds right now. Andre Sisco is playing fantastic. And oh my God, who's the other guy from the Chargers?
Rayshon Jenkins.
Thank you, Rayshon Jenkins. But he's playing really well too. And he's like, but they're making it really tough.
He's an attitude bringer, man. Like he's definitely one of those guys that just brings the tone.
Because they when you have a kind of we're getting these teams in a lot of third and long situations, disadvantageous situations. Now you have safeties that can take advantage of it. This is exactly what the Falcons are kind of doing on their end. Is these defenses are just making it tough. It's that Saints way of going about it. Like it's working right now, and they're throwing in some cool blitzes. I think the Jags are a very good football team that deserve to be. That's why I have them in this kind of tier right now.
I wish I could disagree with that, because that's how I felt like it was coming, especially on offense. And we said that don't panic. Like they
still had 2 turnovers.
Right now, they still had 2 turnovers. And I think that they were always closer than it might have seemed before that Bills game. Yeah. And I think coming away from that London trip against a solid Falcons team and a very good Bills team with 2 wins, that was what you needed to see in order to kind of justify the optimism about this Jags team. But I think that's what we saw.
They're going to have frustrating weeks. That's just how they're kind of do things there, I guess. But they're a good team. I really do think they are.
The fact that you think they belong with the Ravens and the Dolphins, though, is I still think that says a lot about how you see that team.
Oh yeah.
But the Seahawks being in that tier and just in this group, that I think would surprise people. What is your case for why the Seahawks belong in this conversation with the rest of these teams in the kind of the bottom 5 of the top 10? There's a better way to say that, I'm sure.
Much like the Jags, much like the Lions, they have answer questions on their defense, and they're playing just better ball there. And like their DBs are great. And then I just really like the offense. Even with injuries, they're doing good stuff and they're scoring points. And Gino's like Geno's just can deliver any throw, and that's going to give him a chance. The run game is a little bit more sustainable, and that's with injuries to the offensive line. So again, I think better balls.
Charles Cross is back practicing.
Yes.
So he should be back hopefully soon. Abe Lucas is a little bit further away.
Yeah.
I've just been so impressed. I went back and watched the Giants game on the plane because I had no internet and it happened to be downloaded on my laptop. And I was so impressed with the plan with having both of those tackles out and just the ways that they were shoring up the edge with those 2 tight end looks from the backfield. Yep. They've run that set where they kind of send the running back in what I would describe as like yo-yo motion, where he motions out to the right and then comes back. And they've done that to do handoffs to get him on the edge a couple different times. I think they've done it with Walker and with Charbonnet at some point. But now they have a play action off of it. Now they have a screen off of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just been very thoughtful offensive football from them when they've been at less than 100%.
Right.
And when they get closer to 100%, I'm really excited about what they can do. I was watching Geno in that game, and the DK Metcalf touchdown, and there was two more throws in the first half. And the way that I've described it is that Geno's energy right now playing the quarterback position is fuck you, watch this. That's how he's playing. And he's playing with like a man that has stumbled into the second act of his career and understands that it's all house money. And I genuinely love that because he has the skill set where that mindset combined with the way he can play the position makes for some thrilling moments. And if you shore up everything else around him and with this pass catching talent that they have, I think they have potentially better days ahead of them on offense. And they already have been a top 10 offense this year, according to every efficiency metric.
I know. It's Geno, just watching him just sit back there and just rip it. It was so much fun. Him and Goff going at it were a lot of fun.
There's a lot of similarities. I think there's a lot of similarities with those two players and honestly with those two teams.
Yes.
I think the conversation about both of those teams where I think the Lions defense has clearly been better, right?
Yeah.
But the ascension and the direction of the defense combined with the makeup coaching plan on offense, I think has put both the Lions and the Seahawks closer to the NFC contender group than I might have anticipated coming into the year. Right. Even if they belong Seattle in this second tier that we're talking about, I still think that there isn't that big of a gap between Philly, the Lions, and them right now. I really don't.
No,
and I think a lot of that is the talent on defense. They've played much better up front. Jaron Reed, Draymond Jones, and we didn't talk about Devin Witherspoon last week when we were doing the Giants under the hood. That's 100% on me being a shitty host. That dude is awesome.
He's so much fun, man.
He is awesome. And
both these teams got fun rookie nickels. If you want more similarities between the Lions and the Seahawks, with Brian.
So I think there's a lot of similarities between those two teams, and I think the gap is the lack of a gap. I think exemplifies that.
So I agree. I think actually those 4 NFC teams, the next one would be the Cowboys, but I actually think that's tighter than maybe people are even realizing right now.
I think so too, and I honestly think that tightness is one of the stories of the season so far. That's why I wanted to do this as we kind of get toward a midseason check-in.
Real quick, is that the Seahawks offense, real quick, with just their just the pass catchers too, is like you kind of, what's really fun watching with Shane Waldron was with the Lions game or just other games as well, was that every week he's figuring out how to get these guys open in a personnel sense and a play action sense. You're talking about the yo-yo motion. They're doing a little double sidecar formation off of it too. And I've been wanting to write about it for like 3 weeks, and I just like keep pushing it back because I just keep doing. So I'm glad he brought it up, but it's cool to see their pass catchers. But I also want to speak to the Lions is if Jameson Williams can just even be like 70% of what we want him to be, that offense can just explode. And Jahmyr Gibbs comes back healthy. It's like how Laporta has been. Laporta has exceeded all expectations. Everyone liked him. It's like, oh my God, he's even better. So
it's just really funny that my thought about Sam Laporta, and I talked about I talked about offensive coordinator about this before the draft. The hope was, could he be a guy that could be everything Dalton Kincaid is, but you get him around later? Was he just Dalton Kincaid around later? And I thought that might be true. When you watch him at Iowa, he gets an alpha target. He got like 30% of their receiving yards, like everything.
They split him out like an X receiver. Like
his role on that offense. Even if the counting stats weren't there, I was like, man, it really does seem like you might be able to get the same player around later. And that's exactly what happened. He's been even better.
Because the Iowa offense didn't have a very big pie to share. So it's a very sweet pie to share.
So we're talking about this gap and lack of a gap maybe in the NFC. And the last bit of surprise here is you having the Cowboys at the bottom of this list.
I know, right?
You would think that performance on Sunday makes you pessimistic enough about them that they deserve to drop down all the way to 10th in an exercise like this.
It's just, it was very, I'm punishing them. I
They
think
deserve it. I don't think it's unwarranted. I'm just a little bit surprised.
the Leighton Vander Esch
As the
injury,
world's
I know
biggest Dak booster, that this is a moment for you.
Hey, if I get negative on these guys, they have great weeks the following week. It's like, it's 100% true on this show. So, but it's not against Dak. It's more just, oh shoot, Mike McCarthy. And oh shoot, like Leighton Vander Esch is gone. It's like, oh shoot, Micah Parsons might be playing off-ball linebacker again full time. It's like, that is all. It's that. Have you ever seen the GIF, the meme of like the dog with the startled eyes, and then they show all the like horrific images flashing by each one? That's exactly what watching Sunday night was going on. When it was like all the Cowboys stuff I like. I still do think this team is a good or very good team. Like I said, I think these 5 teams are in the same tier. Like any of these teams could pop right back up into that top 5 tier we're talking, or really, what was it? That second 3 tier, I should say. But I really like the Cowboys. I still do, but these injuries are just Diggs being hurt, Leighton Vander Esch now being out. Those guys shore up and help out this defense.
To me, it's more about the Mike McCarthy of it all.
Oh,
You watch that offense, and it's every worst fear. When we had the Mike McCarthy alarm this summer, where you get excited about the personnel, you get excited about the direction. You remember Mike McCarthy is calling plays. McCarthy is calling plays. Brian Schottenheimer is the offensive coordinator. The game on Sunday, and even elements of other games they've played in against lesser teams, this looks like an offense that is coached by Mike McCarthy and Brian Schottenheimer, where it's just slant you to death and just very, very, very traditional West Coast stuff in a world where the best offenses don't look anything like offenses looked like in 1999. And that is concerning.
The best Dak has looked was before he got hurt, in 2019, and before he got hurt in the 2020 season, I believe. And that's when he was just letting it rip down the field. That was the 4 verts era. And that his offense, I always think a Dak offense should almost look more Sean Payton-y, and then an offense like this, which is more horizontal. Sean Payton has that horizontal element, which is great for Dak, but it's actually, you push the ball. That's what I always thought Joe Lombardi kind of messed up with the Chargers, was he just focused on the quick game elements. And it was just like, hey, you need 4 verts. Like you need 989. Like you need that vertical element. And I just don't think they ever lean into that. It's like playing not to lose. And I really do think that whole interception freaking storyline last year, like they took it and ran with it in their own building.
And just the ball control aspect and time of possession.
The half-court offense.
Yes.
Like it's just, that's what it is. It's grinded out offense, which is going to work. That's the thing. This team is still good, and they're going to grind it out against lesser opponents. It's just,
but we're not talking about lesser opponents.
No,
we're talking about the top 10 teams in the league and where they belong in that conversation.
Exactly.
And that's why, even if I think it's a little bit reactionary, I do think that they deserve to be punished based on the way the offense played, and I am genuinely concerned.
Yeah.
By the way, I was genuinely concerned going into the game. We were talking about what they would look like against the Niners, and you want to go back and listen to that show. I think I said this is a tough way to live like 6 different times as we were talking about their offensive approach for the first 4 games. So that's a very useful exercise, because I do think that where a team like the Lions, where a team like the Seahawks fits, and how much more crowded it all feels, I think, across conferences, that's been a little bit of a surprise. So I think doing a little bit of a reset on that 6 weeks in is useful.
The best part about the AFC is all these teams are going to play each other, so it's great. So let's just get to see it.
It's not great when you own all the AFC teams in the wins league that we're doing. Quick update on that, by the way. No change. Still a gap of 3 games. The Chargers didn't play for me last week, so I could have closed the gap by 1 if they had played. So it's not like you didn't have a great week last week. It's not like I'm still, there's the gap is still there.
Ravens loss. Yeah,
I know.
They stinks. I'm like, I didn't gamble on it. I'm great. And I'm like, oh, that's right.
So your lead of 3 is really 2.5, because I've played 1 fewer game combined with the Chargers.
Full on baseball standings.
One more thing removed from the schedule that we wanted to talk about on this show, because we really had no other chance to react to it so far this week, is what's happening with the Vikings. Justin Jefferson going on IR is going to miss a minimum of 4 games. It doesn't sound like it's a season-ending injury, but the fact that they pretty quickly decided to put him on injured reserve, I think, speaks to the severity of the injury. The Vikings are now 1-4. Their best player, one of the best players in the NFL, is going to injured reserve. They have a lame duck quarterback that is not under contract for next year. They have one of the worst defenses in football that has a plan associated with, they haven't even been that bad. They have one of the least talented defenses in football. Let's say that.
Defense has been fine. They've also put monsters on offense.
They have one of the least talented defenses in football that has been deployed in some of the most batshit crazy ways I have ever seen an NFL defense deployed, because they need to. Right? They need to fight an unconventional style here in order to stick with these teams based on the defensive talent that they have. All the breaks that the Vikings got last year,
defense.
That's what it is. That's exactly what it is. All the breaks that this team got last year, 1-score games, turnovers, all that, it's gone the other way this year. They've lost, I think, the most EPA in the NFL on turnovers. Their 1-score game record is completely flipped. Everything, it's a Murphy's Law sort of situation that's unfolding with the Vikings right now. But I think that leads to an interesting conversation potentially about the outlook and then what happens here over the next few weeks before the trade deadline. And then let's say over the next 6 months as they retool for whatever the next version of this looks like. As hard as this is to watch, if you're a Vikings fan after winning 13 games last year, I don't think that the current trajectory is necessarily the worst thing that can happen to the Vikings.
Right. Sometimes a clean break is the best. Sometimes it helps when the decisions get made for you and your arguments get made for you. It's so funny because I actually do really like the offense. And like you said, the defense is funky, and actually it was like kept them in games. And I don't know, it's like some of the down to down stuff is like, oh yeah, this team's not bad. They're almost there. But then you look at what the health of the franchise is and the time of the franchise, and it's like, okay, that's why Jefferson's gone on IR as opposed to maybe trying to battle through a hamstring strain.
They understand what the timeline is.
That's what it is. And you got a team primed to have a young quarterback step in, or a younger quarterback step in at the very least. I mean, with the pieces that we have, we've talked about this, and we talked about in the pre-show, was this team has a couple youngish offensive line pieces. They have Justin Jefferson, they have TJ Hawkinson, they have Jordan Addison. They got a wide open defense, choose your adventure defense as far as like building it. That's not a bad situation for dropping a new quarterback in. So do they go into a fire sale mode? Who can they trade away? Are they accumulating picks? Are they really trying to do that? I don't know. We've always talked about they're kind of trying to bridge two worlds. I think now they get to kind of just balance on one of those legs, kind of figure it out, which I actually think is going to help.
I think in their minds coming into the year, the worst outcome wasn't being really bad. The worst outcome was being somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Whether that be picking 16th because they just missed the playoffs, but in that situation, we can probably move on from Kirk pretty easily. You know, we don't have to worry about the optics of it. We weren't that good. Another potentially troublesome situation is if they had been better than that. Let's say you finish with a 10-7 record, you make the playoffs, you're picking 21st overall. Then what do you do? Is it worth sticking with him? Were you good enough to justify it? Those scenarios are now out the window. So now you're talking about, are you going to be bad enough to potentially land a quarterback as part of this timeline and as part of this equation? And it seems like they might be trending in that direction. We've talked about this. There are multiple guys potentially who could be that quarterback 3 that's worth a first-round pick in this year's draft. And if things keep trending like this, with Jefferson out, we'll see what happens with Cousins. This could be a 5-6 win team that lands in the top 10. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad outcome for them. What's interesting about them is that their plan around a rookie quarterback contract potentially, it would look different than some of the other teams we've seen draft rookie quarterbacks. We've seen other teams draft those guys and then sign a bunch of players around them in order to maximize the financial value of the rookie quarterback contract. The Vikings are likely going to pay Justin Jefferson very soon, even if it hasn't already happened. The idea that Justin Jefferson is going to get traded is very silly.
It's silly.
He is going to get paid, even if there is maybe a gap between what he wants and what they were willing to pay, just because the non-quarterback market has now gone to like $33 million a year, and that's a lot of money. I think they'll figure out a solution there. I don't think he's going anywhere.
And also, it's one of those, pay stars, but also you pay superstars that are like 99 overall.
He's legitimately one of the best players in the NFL. You were going to pay him no matter what he wants.
We want to do a whole series called Queens on the Chessboard. It's like because of Justin Jefferson.
That's it.
He's the catalyst.
Now you're giving away ideas here on the podcast in week 6. So they're gonna pay him. They've already paid TJ Hawkinson.
Yes.
They've already paid Brian O'Neill. They are going to extend Christian Darrisaw eventually. So they're gonna pre-spend in order to maximize the rookie quarterback window in a way similar to what the Steelers have done. If you look at the way the Steelers are built, even though it hasn't worked out the same way because the quarterback isn't great and the offensive coordinator is a disaster, that's the team building plan that Pittsburgh had. So that, I think, is what's on the horizon. Now you are potentially going to be in a position to land the quarterback that allows that plan to come into place. Even if this is kind of gross and it's not what Vikings fans probably wanted, I don't think it is the darkest possible timeline for them.
It's because I said mucky earlier.
Maybe that's it.
Maybe that's it. It's funny in my replies sometimes when I tweet about Drake May or Caleb Williams or any of the quarterbacks, and I get the different photoshops of those guys. And
how many have you gotten at this point? Because I think 25 teams have decided that they're drafting one of those guys.
At least a dozen.
25 fan bases.
It's funny because it changes week to week based on which ones are in the doldrums. And I get to know, even without seeking it out, how fan bases are feeling in that moment. So like a week ago was a lot of Patriots all out of nowhere. I was like, oh, okay. All right, there we go, Patriots. So Vikings fans have been doing a lot of it. I've seen Cardinals early. They were the early favorite this season. Yeah, but got quite a few of those. Packers are starting to get in their feelings a little bit. But yeah, no, it's everybody. But you talked about earlier, like, hey, the Ravens might make that splash move, like Danielle Hunter.
That's the one. Where he lands is the most interesting to me because he's in the last year of his deal. I think it does make sense.
He's the one
that's
not
that old. I think he's only 28, 29.
Like
so I think he's 29.
Rookie.
So he was so
he
young.
used to be a cheat code in Madden and franchise because he was 20 and he had superstar development. So it's just
he's the edge rusher version of Amari Cooper, who's been 21 for the last decade. That's how Danielle Hunter feels. But he's getting toward 30. I think that you can get something for him. He has a $10 million base salary this year. If the Vikings maybe ate some of that because they can, do they get a decent return for him as they kind of figure out this next step? He's the one that I would anticipate being worth something and worth a look from some of these teams. The Cousins thing, I don't see it happening unless the situation that he would go to is very good because he has let's say this. When Jefferson was healthy, there are 3 or 4 teams in the NFL that I think Kirk Cousins would have accepted a trade to. Maybe if Purdy got hurt, for example, something like that. If the Rams needed a quarterback, something like that, where he knew the offense, he knew the system, and he knew he would be set up for success. He has a no trade clause. So he's not going to go to a shitty situation and diminish his value on the eve of free agency. I don't know how the Jefferson injury affects that dynamic, but I still think the bar in terms of how good the landing spot would have to be is very high for him to accept a trade.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think you spelled it out exactly why. I also just, you got to look at who are even possible candidates, like Jets.
I just don't think he's going to the Jets.
No, I don't either because I don't even think Rodgers would allow it.
Yeah.
But that's, so it just none of them.
It would have to be an injury. It would have to be an injury to a contending team because he only has a $10 million base salary.
No, it's very manageable. Yeah.
If you want to make a move for it and you need to salvage your season in some way, for example, you're the Dolphins. Tua gets hurt.
All right.
You don't think Mike White can necessarily take you where you want to go. Is that a move that he would accept? Like those are the types of things I would have in my head.
Type of team that would do it too, actually.
I think so because they're all in.
No, that's a great call.
They need this season. So I think it would be a situation like that. But because he has the no trade clause and because his team and him have done an exceptional job of maximizing his value at every single stage of his NFL career, I think the next set of moves that would happen would be very thoughtful about the landing spot and about why he would accept that, uprooting his family, all of those different considerations. So they're in a fascinating spot.
They are.
I mean, just what their next 6 months is going to look like is fascinating. But if you're a Lions fan or a Vikings fan, I'm sure this is hard to stomach. This is not the worst case scenario.
No,
I think it's important to remember that. Yes.
They actually have a chance of sticking the landing, which is pretty cool. Like if they could do it.
The downside to losing a shitload of games is that it hurts your job security. I think the job security for the decision makers in Minnesota is pretty solid right now after the way that last season went and after the way they've looked on offense, the environment that Kevin O'Connell has created on offense. There are a lot of things pointed in the right direction for them. So a bottom out Murphy's Law type season, again, may not be the worst thing that could happen for Minnesota.
Yeah, they seem thoughtful there, and I think that's what's going to help.
I think that is a very good way to describe it.
Yeah.
Let's get to some week 6 stuff here. 2 matchups that we want to just kind of run through pretty quickly. There's no real game of the week this week, so we're not going to do a game of the week this week, but there are a couple unit on unit matchups that we wanted to discuss. Let's start with potentially one of the matchups of the year, and that is the 49ers offense going up against the Browns defense. For each of these, we're going to talk about kind of 1 or 2 things that you're looking for as you watch this game. What is the number one thing you're looking for on this side of the ball when these two teams play?
Well, first off, the kaiju battle between Myles Garrett and Trent Williams. That's first thing.
Second week in a row.
Yeah. And the other thing, it would be I want to see how Jim Schwartz, defense coordinator for the Browns, changes the picture on Brock Purdy when they have to drop back and pass. He's done a very good job of it his whole career, but also the things that Jim Schwartz likes to lean into, some spot drop zone, some inverted cover 2. The things that the Shanahan offense in the passing game is very good at attacking are those exact coverages. So all those inbreakers are fantastic against those coverages. So, Jim Schwartz and Kyle Shanahan started calling plays at about the same time. Do you think there's a reason for that? So that is, I was trying to find some old matchup between these two, and I was like, okay, so I found one. There was Schwartz Shanahan. It was in 2020. Jimmy G was hurt. So it stunk. So the Eagles had 3 turnovers, held them to a low rushing success rate, but it was Nick Mullins starting. So kind of took that out. But I'm also curious, like the Browns are very good against play action. They're second best defense in terms of success rate, second best in terms of allowing explosive plays. They also have one of the quickest times to pressure on play action passes, but so did the Cowboys. And we saw how that went. So it's a strength on strength type of thing. How does all these other Browns, I think it's going to be a big Zadarius Smith week because of how he moves around, and maybe they can find a matchup for him against maybe the right tackle or one of the guards that they might like. So it's going to be a really good strength on strength matchup. I do think both teams will have answers, but they also have counter punches.
It's funny because I think a lot of elements of the Cowboys offense, even if front structure wise, they're a little bit different than the Browns are. We've talked about this. They have a lot of similarities in style of play, coverage venue, even the way the roster is built. So is the plan that we saw for Micah Parsons specifically last week going to be something they do with Myles Garrett? A lot of pullers, a lot of chipping, a lot of sliding his direction. We're running split zone play action where the tight end's coming across, just making things muddy for him with a bunch of different designs. And then the other thing I find interesting is that this is a front that the Niners are very used to playing against, like this 4-man attacking front where they love to get upfield. Do we see some traps? Do we see some gap scheme runs? Do we see some ways to get those guys up the field and make them pay for it? And then the other similarity to Dallas, all the man coverage. Right. The Browns have played a ton of man coverage this year. They played a ton of single high man coverage. Brandon Ayuk has eaten against those looks. He has eaten against man coverage this year. But Denzel Ward has been fantastic. Does he follow him? What does that matchup look like? So I think it's a lot of similarities to what we saw last week, but I think the Browns, because of the players they have in the secondary right now, are just more equipped to deal with this version of the Niners.
I think so too. And they just have, the Cowboys are fast, but those intermediate defenders for the Browns have been fast and playing JOK. They've been playing really good ball so far. So I think this is just going to be an awesome matchup. Shanahan always does find his answers. Like, don't get me wrong, Schwartz is going to throw some stuff early. So this first 15, like this first quarter and a half, those first 15 plays are going to be so interesting because you're going to see exactly what these teams think of each other. And I think they both are like, that team's good. So we'll see how it goes.
Next one here, the Eagles offense against the Jets defense. Another very good matchup this week. Number one, your thing you're looking for with these two teams.
Sauce Gardner versus A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. So you got the slender man battle. Then you got Brown's power versus Sauce's skill and length. So I think the offense's left side is going to be targeted a bunch. Sauce Gardner lines up on the offense's right. And so whichever guy lines up, the Eagles do not do the kind of whole same side old Indianapolis Colts stuff, but they're the best defense in terms of DVOA, defending deep throws to the defense's left, offense's right, and they are middle of the pack on the other side. So I think a lot of balls are going to the left there. I'm very curious how Dallas Goedert gets used. Jets aren't great covering tight ends, and they're not great covering tight ends, especially out of base. And the Eagles have leaned into 12 personnel with 2 tight ends a little bit this year. And so maybe some play action off of that. Those are the things I'm really looking for, is how they attack those linebackers and the non-Sauce Gardner corner with all the weapons that the Eagles have.
It's a really interesting point. I was talking to a coach last week and just discussing the similarities about game planning for the Niners defense compared to game planning for the Jets defense, because similar schematic DNA, obviously we know that. The team speed that the Niners have at the second level is the differentiating factor between those two defenses, like more than anything else. So what Dallas Goedert can do when you take that into account, I think is a really good thing to think about.
Yeah. And it's Jets run a lot of quarters. They want to run a lot of man coverage. And I think both of those matchups are conducive to Dallas Goedert. So it kind of could be, I see a lane for him having a good week. And also, another freaking kaiju battle. Oh my God. The Eagles offensive line versus Jets defensive line is going to be awesome across the board. So can't wait for that. See how that goes throughout 60 minutes.
All right. We want to do one quick under the hood this week. And we wanted to take a look at the Panthers offense and what is going on with Bryce Young right now. Some struggles. Obviously, the Panthers are still winless. They are currently 30th in offensive DVOA so far this season. It has been a struggle on that side of the ball for Carolina. And I think the most frustrating part about this is that you contrast that with what the Texans offenses looked like with CJ Stroud and what the Colts offenses looked like in general, but mostly when Anthony Richardson has been in the game. So when you went back and you studied the Panthers offense, how worried are you about what Bryce Young has looked like and about what that unit has looked like so far this year?
I'll start with the unit. I think schematically I feel like I've said this about a few underwhelming units. It's very NFL standard, and they run just a lot of the classic concepts. They're not dressed up great. And I think there's good and bad with that, is that I can, go through each play and I can tell you exactly what that play concept is called. But then there's not a lot of that. If I can do that, what are defenses thinking of that as well? They're not kind of getting that flash and that change and that changing moving picture. I think it's helped Bryce Young and see some of his strengths and maybe some of these weaknesses so far. And also as the team, they don't have a lot of juice at pass catcher. Man, so even schematically, they do some good.
Yeah,
slow. And if there's 2 plays that stood out to me. Okay, they did a counter run with Shenault, and it's Chenault's a nice, well-rounded player. Don't get me wrong, but not nice, but he's a well-rounded player, but he is not fast. And so it's it got blocked off. He got 6-7 yards, but it's that should have gone for 20 if he just could have hit the crease and gone. And then they had a 3-by-1 in the red zone against the Lions, and they put Adam Thielen at X, so he's the lone receiver. And they run him on a slant or in breaker, and should be a walk-in touchdown if he can win against press. And he just gets gloved up, and then it's Bryce Young. That's where he's going with the ball, and he's well, I gotta get rid of it. So he just kind of throws it in front, kind of dirts it, and it's kind of one of those where it's they need an ace to help this whole out. They need a DJ Moore to help this whole system out. But watching Bryce Young he's accurate. He knows where the ball should be going, but he's also not very aggressive. And and you can see some of his athletic and size limitations already cropping up. I think each week he has gotten a little bit better because he's figuring out what he can and can't get away with. But that's also what gets you kind of more optimistic, but also a little bit more worried. Because it's now you're seeing what his cap is, that we're going oh, what can he get away with? As not going wow, this guy's too aggressive, this guy's too crazy. More on what can he actually pull off? So it's kind of a Alex Smith type path that I'm seeing right now. But again, it's a month and a half into his career. You don't know, but that is what I'm seeing. An efficient guy, fairly athletic, but more of a play extender than play kind of crazy run around Lamar Jackson type. And that's what I'm seeing right now. Not an overwhelming arm talent that can get the ball, but he could get out there accurately, but it's not those line drives we see the elite guys have. So that's some good, a little bit more from the Lions game, but there's a lot of that have you kind of wondering what that cap is.
Before we'll talk about the Bryce Young stuff in a second, but the schematic kind of design and what the offense feels like. I'm interested in that because we had so many conversations this summer about what the offense would look like with all of these guys that have disparate backgrounds that have never worked with each other before. And it feels like, and again, this is just observational, it's based on no conversations, that because everything is so disparate about where they come from, maybe what the ideas are, that what they have landed on are the simple traditional things because that's the shared DNA that everyone has. And also that potentially could be an expression of the personnel. You know, when you have a guy like Tyreek Hill, when you have all of this explosiveness, when you have all these really talented skill guys, I think that we see that express with creativity across the league because coaches feel compelled to find ways to use those guys to dictate matchups. The Panthers don't have any players that justify that sort of plan. So that and the shared DNA among the coaches has landed us in like the most boring place. It's not malpractice, but it is boring. And I think that you see that when you watch them.
It's the lowest common denominator offense. That's what it is. It's just like they are going like, okay, this is appeals to everybody. We're good here. This is the 4 quadrants offense, wherever that the marketing thing is. But that's a great observation. It really is that they just went, oh, you run stick? Okay, cool. I run stick too. Yeah, okay. All right, you run that high low? Yep, I run it too. That play action overs? Yep, okay, I run it. And it's improving because they're kind of going what they can and cannot use, what Bryce is good at, what he's not good at, what we can get out of these receivers. But again, it's like even the stuff that he is good at, you can see some of the limitations. Like they run some RPOs. He's good with RPOs, but then he's throwing like an out route and the ball, he's flat footed, the kind of throw you have to make, and it's looping out there and a good corner would break on it.
He is not physically overwhelming.
He's not.
We knew this. He is not physically overwhelming. And you see it manifest in a bunch of different ways. You talk about the RPOs, you can see that. There was a play on the first drive, and they ran like a deep curl, and it was there. And he does not rip that. And it's because I don't think he can. I don't think he has a sort of arm strength where he's going to drive throws into those sorts of windows. And you can live that way. Like we've seen quarterbacks succeed without that skill set. The problem is if you don't have that overwhelming physical skill set, a lot of stuff needs to be right around you. You need to have a lot of talent. You need to have a schematic advantage, and they don't have either of those right now. So I think as a result, you see how ordinary his physical skills are in these specific circumstances. That's what I have watched so far. I don't think full-blown panic is necessary.
No.
I don't think that people have to be really concerned about what's going to happen down the road, any of that stuff quite yet. But they had to diminish the supporting cast and the circumstances in order to draft him. And I think that's part of why you've seen the results that have happened so far.
Yep. There's a little bit of a O. Henry irony to it going on because of that. They like, honestly, it's like the guy they need is the guy they traded away to get the guy that they took.
But that's why the quarterback needs to transcend those sorts of things when you give up this for him.
And when you're pick number 1. And that's the thing. And when there's a difference between taking a guy in the first round, a Mac Jones, a Pickett, and taking a guy number 1 overall when there's several choices as well. And that's why those guys, and this was the argument in the spring, was even if Richardson wasn't all the way there, his upside is just that elite status. And it was like, can Bryce Young reach that elite status? And when that number 1 isn't that what you're trying to reach? CJ Stroud was just, his baseline was so high already, and he had room for growth as physically and just also, you want guys that are scheme proof. That's always the highest compliment you can give a guy. You want a guy that's scheme proof, especially at quarterback, especially at one that you're taking number 1 overall. He needs help, but that's part of the problem as well. It's just it's a sticky situation.
Speaking of sticky situations,
mucky situation.
How worried are we about the head coach coming out 5 weeks into the year and openly complaining about the interactions that he has to have with the owner?
Believe it. Unbelievable. That was like kind of like, yeah, or whatever. Like, yeah, that was interesting as far as that's only October and that he's already kind of dropping those kind of press conferences. So there was no leak. It wasn't like kind of sources say, this is a full blown press conference, is letting that all out.
He was already upset about how those conversations were going. How do you think the most recent conversation went after that happened?
Man, unbelievable. I usually sometimes I'm just like, all right, whatever, coach is saying stuff. I listen to that thing over and over. It's just like, oh my God, he really just is like, just whatever. Just like, yeah, he's hands on. That's exactly.
And those conversations aren't fun, says Frank Reich. Oh, goodness gracious. It's not great.
The stories of
not good.
owner coaches meetings are just the best. Like I was just say the best. They're almost like cringeworthy. It's just a lot of Monday meetings and just a lot of head coaches, very powerful people dreading these meetings with their owners
Just
because it
nodding a
just
lot. Mm-hmm.
nodding a lot. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we should throw the ball more. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Why isn't our second round pick playing? Yep. I don't know. That your son's favorite player? I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know. Like that's kind of how it goes.
Normally, I would feel for Panthers fans, and I would be like, "Ah, man, this is tough. It's gonna be a tough year." Unfortunately, in this particular situation, I'm taking a lot of delight in whatever bad things are going to happen to the Panthers over the next 10
For a
weeks.
split second, I was like, "What did Panthers fans do to you?" And then the other shoe dropped.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, it's nothing personal. I don't
Is
wish
that
ill
why you
upon
want to
any
talk
of you.
about it? No.
I think we need to talk about it
We
because there's
did.
been a lot of conversation about the number one pick struggling and the other
Think
guys drafted in the top 5 and not struggling. And
right.
it really kind of digging in a little bit on why that might be the case, I think was worthwhile at this stage of the proceedings.
Absolutely.
Got a couple entries on the Wick scale for week 6. For those of you who don't know, the John Wick scale is the revenge meter that we like to use for revenge games throughout the NFL because there is no better symbol of revenge than John Wick. And you need to watch John Wick 4, by the way, if you haven't. I'm still a little bit upset with you that you still haven't gotten to it.
That's yeah. That'll be tonight. Yeah, I'll watch that tonight.
We have a show tonight, you know that, right?
No, I stay up late Thursday because I'm always like kind of amped after the show. So Thursday's a big movie. Thursday and Sundays are big movie nights for me.
I'm on the East Coast, by the way, so I'm going to be a little bit loopy here. We're doing this show at midnight after we have to watch this Broncos team. So everyone should be on the lookout for whatever that outcome is like on YouTube. First one here, Jacoby Myers going against the New England Patriots. Giving it.
People keep asking if I'm back. Yeah, I'm thinking I'm back. People keep asking.
Triple again. Oh no, we caught it after 1.5.
I'm going. What do you think about this? Jacoby Myers going against the Patriots. How many wicks?
3.5.
I think it deserves 3.5. I think it deserves 3.5 because here's why. I think this is a notable revenge game for one specific reason. If the Patriots had used the money that they were going to use to pay Jacoby Myers and they had spent it on a pass rusher, or it's like, yeah, Jacoby, I'm sorry. We can't afford to keep you because we need to spend on an offensive lineman or we need to shore up other areas of the roster. Then I could see an amicable split. He gets a decent payday with the Raiders. No hard feelings. They let him leave and then they give a comparable contract to Juju Smith-Schuster. And the number one talking point about the Patriots over the first month of the season is that they have no talent at the skill position players. So I think that there is a justifiable bit of FU energy happening with Jacoby Myers coming into this game for that specific reason.
Oh, it's also like with Jacoby Myers, it's like how he plays. Like he's like one of my favorite hipster card here. One of my favorite blocking receivers, and like how he plays, it's just like, why isn't that the Patriot way? Like, isn't this the guys, like undrafted guys?
He's just good at football.
He's awesome.
Jacoby Myers is just a good player. I know it's been a joke
right
that's
now.
just been hammered into the ground over the last 2 weeks, but the Patriots could sure use a player like Jacoby Myers. That's real. And I assume that he also feels that way heading into this game. So I'm looking forward to that.
And the Raiders have one of the weirdest offenses I've watched in a while. Weird in that it's like just all these pounded 1-yard runs and then like this kind of crazy hyper efficient passing game offense. Davante Adams and Jacoby Myers. It's like I somewhat kind of enjoy it.
The formula has been fascinating. When other teams are doubling Davante Adams, they just throw the ball to Jacoby Myers every single play. And as somebody who is heavily invested in Davante Adams in fantasy this year for reasons that still upset me, it's somewhat frustrating, but I understand for them it's a good thing in the past.
It looks like one of those books that you see like when you're at the airport and you're like, that one's a bestseller. I've never even heard of it. And it's like, the targets of Jacoby Myers, like the yards of Jacoby Myers. That's exactly what the book feels like this year.
One more here. Kellen Moore going back and playing against the Cowboys as the offensive coordinator for the Chargers. How many wicks for Kellen Moore against the Cowboys?
Oh, I wanted to crank it up, but I think a 4.
Unfortunately, we've set the bar. 5 was the Hackett game last week, so that's 5.
That was worth
I
a
don't
5
think
too.
it rises to that level.
We've had some 4.5s, I think, before. So that was worth a 5. That was a perfect 5. So I think 4 feels very fitting, I think, for this.
Again, similar sort of situation. you get ousted so your head coach can then call plays, and now you get to go play against that defense.
Right.
So I think a lot of motivation for Kellen Moore to potentially hang 50 on Mike McCarthy, and on the way out be like, yeah, man, I'm glad you ran the ball as much as you did. Congratulations.
That's what it is. It's not like they hired a new OC to just call one for one swap them. He just said, you're out. I can do better.
Yes, that's exactly what happened.
It's just like so blatant. And they
took shots at him.
Took shots on him. Yeah, he just always wants to throw the ball. Just always wants to do his gadget stuff. And it's like, hey, maybe he did that because he had to create some explosives in that offense. Maybe that's exactly what was needed. How the Cowboys though in this game are going to figure out their world without LVE will be very, very interesting. I called him Makalele for a reason because he just shored up everything in front of him for that Cowboys defense. So it's scary.
I get that reference after watching the David Beckham documentary this week.
You did? When he was with Madrid?
I did. I saw Makalele as a name. I don't know a lot about it.
It's because they had guys like Beckham. Beckham wasn't playing a lot of defense. He wasn't the grittiest guy. So so guys in front of him were doing their star things. There's Makalele just doing all the dirty work behind him. But that's what Wayne Vander Esch does. That's what he helps out with. And even though they've experimented a little bit this year with Micah Parsons at inside linebacker, like they would swap him with Vander Esch. Vander Esch is on the line of scrimmage, and then Parsons is as like a true linebacker. They blitz him like every time doing.
Yeah, I think he has 100% pass rush rate. Like in terms of like pass plays, he has rushed the passer on 100% of plays.
Every time they wind up there, they said, "We're just keeping you forward. You're not reading anything out. Hit the B gap, and then go off of that." So it's a little scary if that's going to be their answer on defense for that.
So the Cowboys and Chargers is the Monday night game this week, which is a very good Monday night game. I'm excited about that. The other primetime game this week is the Giants and the Bills. And the only reason I wanted to quickly mention this is what Wink Martindale has done over the last 2 weeks is hilarious to me. He is just heaping praise on whatever offense or players that he's playing against on the other side of the ball are. He said last week before they played the Dolphins that he was sleeping like a baby. He was waking up 2 hours, going to the bathroom and crying, which is a great all-time dad joke. Today, Wink Martindale comes out during his press conference, and this is according to our Dan Duggan at The Athletic. So Wink Martindale's comparison for Josh Allen, Dan Marino's arm, Derrick Henry's legs, and Steph Curry's mindset in a way that he thinks he can hit a shot from anywhere on the court. He's clearly a man that's just yearning for something more. Like he just wants something better on offense so badly that he's just pining after these offenses that he has to play against. It's been awesome to watch.
It's just like enough. The sleeping like a baby quote just sent me. I was like, oh my God. I feel like I've heard that 100 times before, but I feel like it was the first time I heard it as well. But that's what it is. Wink, I think, acts day to day exactly how he coaches. He's going to say what he wants to see. He's going to run what he wants to run, damn it. He's going to say it. But I think that's exactly it. I think he's watching these offenses pop off 30, 40, 70 points. He's just like, that's so nice. I only have to hold him to 20, 21. Like, that's so nice. So, no, good shout out to Wink Martindale for being Wink Martindale.
All right, it's time for Win My Fourth Screen. Each week, you guys get to petition or send in a case for what game belongs in the fourth screen of my Sunday watching experience. This one from Ryan Doyle. He says, as sports fans, we are bound to our teams, for better or for worse. We think as fans, we can help control the outcome of the games through various rituals, like sitting in a certain seat, wearing a lucky jersey, changing socks at halftime. Anyone who's played or watched sports has, at some point in their life, done something to will their team to win, and I am no exception. What started as a fun way to keep in touch with my dad after I moved away for a job morphed into a superstition that has lasted 20 years. You see, Mays, I'm a Patriots fan, and over the course of a fantastic run of success and scoring, I would call my dad after every touchdown by the Patriots. We have never missed a touchdown in 20 years. If someone was driving or I was at my kid's soccer game, the other would text or leave a voicemail for a quick callback. We'd analyze the play, talk about how the game is going, complain about various aspects, and just talk. Sometimes we talk multiple times a game, others just once or twice, but for 20 years, every fall, we would have great conversations together. For two guys who aren't used to talking on the phone, this was a great, comfortable, and fun way to stay close with someone who is hundreds of miles away. Mays, I have not spoken to my dad in 3 weeks. And to be honest, I'm not sure when it will happen again. This once proud, innovative franchise has turned into an antiquated, offensively deficient, turnover-prone laughingstock with no clear future in sight. The offense is so bad, it is literally straining my relationship with my pops.
Wow. That was
I
wonderful.
love that one because it's so warm and there's something
Oh,
so
I was loving
beautiful.
it.
I used to call my dad every Tuesday. And I used to call him every Tuesday because I didn't want to call him on Monday because the Bears were so good that year. But in his mind, the Bears were always terrible. So
Yeah.
he would just make me feel worse about the win that they had. So I always wanted to give myself 24 hours to enjoy it. So as somebody who had a lot of well-ingrained rituals with his own father about the NFL, I really appreciated this. And then the left turn it takes at the end
was
is
perfect.
just beautiful. So thank you very much to Ryan for sending that in. That was a particularly good one.
Yeah, I had some fun conversations with my dad over the years about football games. A lot of my weeks were decided by what happened for 3.5 hours on Sunday mornings, like for a lot of years of my life.
Oh, it's beautiful. All right, finish this off. It is time for Tice's Touts. Your favorite 3 picks of the week. Not a good week for you last week, buddy.
No, I believe I got skunked.
0-3. You are 6-9-1 on the season. At least you
I was like, I feel like I was around 500 going into that week. Yeah, that was rough. Yeah, especially one of my favorite ones was Patriots. Saw that one. I wasn't alone. That line kept moved to a pick 'em. And yeah, anyways, gonna just put the stank on some of these teams. Gonna go Seahawks plus 2.5 against the Bengals. Like we talked about, I think the Seahawks are a very good team. They're coming off a bye week. The Bengals did look a lot better against the Cardinals, and it's like good. Okay, we can see that.
That's a surprising line. I think that is we now believe in the Bengals sort of line when you think about the Seahawks and how well they played getting points in that game.
That's exactly. I was kind of surprised me. They're seeing it as neutral at 2.5, so I'm going to take the points. But I think I think this game's going to be a lot of fun. Going to go as much as I've been enjoying what the Cardinals have been doing. I'm going to go Rams -7. Just because I think that the Cardinals won't be able to hold on for their defense going against that Rams offense with Cooper Kupp back. Even with some offensive line banged up with the Rams, the Cardinals can only do so much, I think, of how quickly Stafford's getting rid of the ball. So I think maybe
like that explosion for the Rams offense is coming.
That's what
one of these games. It feels like we're getting there.
They're moving the ball so well and they're pushing the ball and Stafford's playing well. They just got to, just take advantage of their chances. And I think this will be a good game for them. Nice little mouthwash.
7's a lot though, man.
I thought it was going to be
7's
a 5. I know, but home. So 2.5. So right there. So yeah, that's about right. Okay. The last one, because just can't help myself. Lions -3 at the Bucks. Just think that Lions seems very good, even with the injuries that they've been cropping up. The Bucks team, also coming off a bye. So, okay, we got that. But I do think this Lions team is just outclasses them. And they always just put together a good game plan. They're going against an opponent that has enough film out there in Todd Bowles. And on the other side of the ball, what they're doing on offense, I don't think that's going to be as foreign. They might have some similarities. So I think that the Lions are just a very good team. The Bucks aren't bad, but
this is a good test for the Lions offense. This is a very good test for the Lions offense.
This game is way more interesting
than this game.
Way more interested in this game after I started kind of looking at it more. But I think it's going to be a good one. I really do. It's going to be an interesting one. I should probably take the points. Should I take the points? Should I take the points? You get to pick this for me. And then I get to blame you or credit you.
It's funny that we spent so much time earlier on the show talking about how much we like the Lions right
now. I know.
And I still don't feel great because the Lions this is true. They have looked different outdoors and on the road over the last couple of years. And the Bucs defense has played very well so far this season. So I would probably take the Lions in this game, but I wouldn't feel good about it.
Yeah. All right. I'm sticking with my gut. I'm going with the Lions. Robert approved.
That's kiss of death, my friend. That's the last thing you want is for me to agree with one of these picks.
No, I want it. That way it just makes me feel, it helps me just go like, okay, at least someone else could see the angle, even if it's not it was a fully committed angle that you just brought there.
All right. That is all we've got. As always, really appreciate you guys listening. Please check out our Broncos Chiefs recap that will be available on YouTube by the time you guys finish this up. If you have not listened to the other shows on the Athletic Football Show feed this week, a lot of good stuff. Kiefer and the Beats digging into some Patriots talk, Vikings. Please go listen to that if you have not. Really good insight from all of our beat writers on that show. Fun episode in the pocket this week. Chase Daniel had a lot of very cool anecdotes about some of the game planning stuff Andy Reid does, his history with Sean Payton, how they're different as game planners. Really cool insight from Chase. And as always, please go listen to Prospects to Pros with Nate and our guy, Dane Brugler. For now, that is all we've got. Sincerely appreciate you guys listening. We'll talk to you soon.